All right, so where to begin? I think perhaps the most interesting thing about winter is that it's just kind of forbidding, right? You know, going out, hanging outside in the summer is wonderful, and we always think of the winter as just being cold and miserable. Partly because in Tennessee, the weather that we typically get is kind of like we've had the last few days, right? 40s, 30s, and rain. But in Tennessee, we also have a really great resource, which is high elevation. And if you go to high elevation in the winter, sometimes this weather turns into beautiful snow or windy, blowing ice or very challenging conditions for us. So one of the reasons why winter backpacking is also fun is it's because you get to challenge yourself. And let's face it, backpacking is partly about challenging yourself, right? If you didn't want to do that, you could stay home. There's also a lot fewer people outside, and most backpackers are in search of wilderness, solitude, quiet, things like this, that in the fall, perhaps your favorite campsite, it doesn't have those qualities. In the winter, almost every place, even the most popular places, are going to be quiet. You actually have less impact in the winter as well, right? Because if you camp on top of a foot of snow, you don't have to worry about trampling vegetation or things like that you have to worry about the rest of the year. For me, really big one, it's harder to sweat. And I don't like sweating, especially when you lay in your tent at night and you're sweating in Tennessee. So we get to avoid that. And there's a lot of bugs in Tennessee for the 3 seasons of the year. In winter, there's still bugs, but there are a lot fewer of them. Yes, I've been out snow hiking and seen there are spiders that come out in the snow. There are flies that come out in the snow. Yeah, it's strange. But in any case, there's a lot of reasons why you should give this a chance. But you have to know what you're doing. Because if you go out there and you don't know what you're doing, even in the South, you can find yourself in a world of problems, and in fact, you can die. So if at least you pay attention to a few things. Pay attention to things that are, related to how not to die. Really, it's going to be lighter than that. So the most important thing about having fun in the winter is staying dry and warm. A lot of people say, oh yeah, it's all about warm and dry. Warm and dry, warm and dry. It kind of sounds better that way, but the prioritization is dry and warm, because if you're wet, you might be warm right now, but you're going to be freezing later, right? So if you can stay dry first, even if you're a little bit cold, if you're dry, you're probably going to be okay. So keep that in mind. And one of the ways that you stay dry is to avoid sweating. And when you exercise, we tend to sweat, especially when we're all bundled up, or we're in a big ski jacket, and we're hiking through 6 inches of snow, which is a lot more effort than normal. You tend to start overheating quickly. So one of the things I'm going to talk about is layering. We can go ahead and talk about probably the glamour layer, the layer that everybody wants to spend a lot of money on, and that's the base jacket layer, right? Your coats and your puff jackets and all these kind of things, right? So a lot of people make the mistake, they say, I'm going to go winter hiking, and they grab this. This is like your ski jacket, right? It's thick, it's really warm. You can have this outside in, 20 degrees, 10 degrees, and you'll be okay. It's pretty wind resistant, and it's just nice and thick, right? Got a lot of insulation here. Everybody's seen one of these before. I don't need to pass this around the room, right? You know what I'm talking about. What's not so common is when you say, you know what, I'm going to leave that at home, but I'm going to go to the mountains in 20 degrees, and I'm going to be warm. And the reason that you can do that is you layer. So this is my base layer. This is what I recommend starting with. This happens to be an REI brand base layer. It's a thicker kind of fleece kind of material, and I'll pass this around so you can take a look. Don't smell it. And a couple of features that I want to point out. If you're shopping, we're standing in REI here, so I like to talk about shopping. Make the decisions when you're shopping, get the right gear. When you're shopping for a base layer, buy something that has at least one pocket that's against your skin. Because you're always going to be wearing this, and you may have some gears, like I personally wear contact lenses. I keep my contact lens case against my chest so it doesn't freeze, because that's bad news. Another thing that I keep close to my chest is like water purification supplies, other kind of liquid valuables. So I keep those in my chest pocket. And then the other, you'll see these when I pass them around, it's the thumb hole. This is pretty common these days. It used to be revolutionary, but there's a hole and you stick your thumb through there so that your sleeves don't ride up while you're hiking. Because if you expose the 2 inches around your wrist, that's one of the coldest places on your body. So this keeps you so that you cover your entire arms and you don't have to worry about your sleeves riding up. So those are my key base layer features. Have a pocket of some sort that's against your body and have those thumb holes. And lastly, please, no cotton. Everybody hear the rule, right? Cotton kills. Thank you. I don't have to teach you that. So you can pass this stuff around, show and tell. Just make sure it gets back up to the front at some point. Next layer, you have a choice, right? Now, there are plenty of times you're working really hard while you're hiking, and the base layer might be all that you wear because you're producing so much heat. If it's windy or it's really cold, that's not going to be the case. This is a classic, the puff jacket. These have become, half of you have them on in here. There are 2 major choices you have with puff jackets. Down or synthetic, and full zip or quarter zip, or half zip as it will be. This is kind of dirty, but it's okay, it's just campfire smoke. Again, I've got a pocket against my chest here so I can keep items from freezing. That's important. This also packs in on itself, which is fancy. This is a synthetic. The nice thing about synthetic is if you get it wet, it still provides quite a bit of insulation value. Down, on the other hand, it does provide a little bit of insulation value when wet, but not, as a general rule, you don't trust down kind of wet or damp conditions. So if you're thinking you're going to go hiking, it's going to be 35 and rainy, you have a choice, this is going to be your better bet. In Tennessee, I'd recommend the synthetic. If you're going to Minnesota and it's going to be minus 20 outside, get your down out, that's going to be better. Okay, and then lastly, you need some kind of shell, right? Now this jacket provided all 3 layers with one jacket. What happens if you get overheated though? Now you either have all layers or no layers. While I'll be out there hiking, I will take a layer, I'll add a layer, subtract a layer. If I start to get warm, it's sort of shedding layers, adding layers, keeping up with the weather so that ideally I don't sweat at all. Typically when I go winter backpacking, the only place I sweat is behind the pack, where I think it's required that if you want to be a backpacker, you have to sweat there. So this is just a classic Gore-Tex jacket. It's real nice. I've had it for a couple years now. It's, really, it's all it is. It's a waterproof outer shell, windproof, waterproof. And so this makes up the outer layer. Sometimes I wear this with just my base layer. Sometimes the insulating layer goes underneath it. But it'll keep the snow from melting through. And I do like having something like that. Make sure it's got a hood. And that is it for the glamour layer. Anybody have any questions about that? Yeah.
How long does a Gore-Tex jacket normally last you?
So, believe it or not, this is my first Gore-Tex jacket, so I'll let you know. If you're going to heavily use any gear, don't plan on lasting more than 4 to 5 years. Is probably my general rule of thumb for almost everything. But if you're good with it, sometimes it can last longer. The problem with these waterproof materials is even Gore-Tex, it will start to fail over time. Or you'll do something stupid with it. You give yourself 5 years, you'll mess everything up, right? So that's something to consider. My other rain jacket was not Gore-Tex, it was just like a laminate. And it lasted me, I think, 4 years before it starts peeling and rubbing away. So the Gore-Tex, will see if that lasts me a little bit longer. It certainly cost me a little more money. Somebody.
Wool works well.
Yeah, absolutely. Wool, fleece. Wool and fleece both, when they're wet, they also work. The one problem I have with them is that they don't pack as well, especially fleece.
They're a little bit heavy.
So the synthetic puff jacket, it packs down about that big, just like the down. The wool and the fleece, great choices for backpacking, but they don't pack down quite as nicely. Anybody else? Okay. Next I'll go to the layer that we don't like to talk about as much, the pants and underwear. And I just to show you, these are the same underwears that I wear in the summer. They're just synthetic, your base layer. And then I also I didn't bring my hiking pants. That's normally what I would wear, would be hiking pants. And then I have some rain pants that double for me as snow pants. Because if you layer up underneath them, all you're looking for is a waterproof outer layer. if it's snowing pretty good. My experience, this is always, your mileage may vary. My experience is that wearing quick dry hiking pants, if it's just a light snow, your body heat is going to keep up with that and it's going to keep them pretty dry. So you don't need to worry about that too much, like wetting through. Working down from there, I wear Gators. So Gators go over, they go over your shoes and lower the legs. I haven't seen these before. They're pretty clever. They have a strap that goes underneath your shoe, and they basically take your low-top boots and they make them into high-top boots, which is pretty cool. Let's see them over here. I need like a chair to stand on, or like a table. There you go. All right, so Gators are really helpful because they do keep the snow and also sticks and mud and everything from getting down into your boots. I'm not real concerned about my pant legs, but the snow and water getting in my boots is important. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is footwear. So I'm actually I decided to wear tonight my hiking equipment for my feet in the winter. These are just low-top Keens that run you $100, $120. So nothing crazy, nothing super-duper waterproof or anything like that. But I don't wear these exposed in the snow. So I've got some wool socks on here, and all I do, wear my low-top Keens, and then I have these fancy, they're called overshoes. And what I do is I take my non-waterproof but insulated, kind of warm low tops, and I step into these, and they are waterproof. And now they're basically Colossians, but they've got their own tread on the bottom. Can you see that? You have all kinds of acrobatics up here. All right, but they're waterproof up to now, my mid-calf. And then I add my Gators on top of that, and now I'm almost waterproof up to my knee.
One question on the Gators. Are you going to use the Gator on top of the...
Yep, I can use my Gators and then go right over top of those to give me, really nice bottoms. Any questions on these? I'll pass them around. Yeah.
What's it like hiking in those?
What do you think, Keith?
I love them. I mean, after I saw him use them once, I bought them, and they're absolutely great.
So Keith and I went on a trip early December, and it was your classic Tennessee situation. Rain up until about 4,000, 5,000 feet, and then a foot and a half of snow up to 6.5, and then back down into the rain and the slush again. And these guys, we walked through puddles and stream trail, where the trail's just full of leaves and wet. And we got back to the car, and you get a little condensation, but it was impressive. I thought that would be a little wet through, and they were dry.
Clunky though?
No, not too bad, not too bad. Make sure you get the right size. They have a chart on there, but yeah, anyway. And if you want to come up and poke around with this stuff a little bit more at the end, you're welcome to do that. I don't think REI sells those. I wish they would. You can order them off their website. They're from Neos. Oops, that's the wrong thing. Okay, next step. These are really, really useful in Tennessee. And another product that I will say is worth it. These are micro spikes. So these go on the bottom of your shoes. You can wear them, if you're just wearing regular shoes, or if you've got your overshoes, they'll go over top of that. They don't go over top of snowshoes, but what they are is they're a set of chains with spikes on the bottom, and they allow you to grip into the ice and hard snow. These things are worth their weight. Usually you end up carrying them most of the time, okay, but they're worth having in your pack because sometimes the trails, particularly at higher elevation, there's a lot of moisture up there, and if it drops below freezing, it all freezes and becomes kind of like a frozen waterfall. You can literally, run on ice, if you will. They grip really well. There's a lot of brands of these, and I don't like to bash the other brands. I don't believe in bashing, but I will prop up the brand that I believe in. The reason that I bought these Kahtolas is the brand, K-A-H-T-O-O-L-A, is because I went on a trip up in New Hampshire, and my buddy rented us gear. He rented us gear from the MIT Outdoors Club. All All right. So they give you this bag, and it says MIT on it, and they rent these things out weekend after weekend, year after year. All right. So I'm taking their vouching for it, and they're only a couple bucks to rent. So you do the math. These things cost about $70 to order new. So that means these things they're expecting these to last for years with heavy use. I've had them out. You walk over rocks, you walk over snow, you walk over ice with a pack on, up and down over surfaces. Everybody else's things fall apart, and now over the years when I go snow camping, everybody has these. So just skip right, just for an extra 30, 40 bucks, you can get the best. Highly recommend it. Do you have a question? Oh, Catula's. I think it's on the bag. There's another thing next to it. And that's pretty much all I've got for normal footwear. Anybody have any questions? No? Okay, now the reason everybody came here tonight is they wanted to see snowshoes in the real, right, in the flesh. A lot of people in Tennessee, you don't ever see snowshoes. So I brought my snowshoes. Yeah, I'm from Michigan. That's normally where I use them. And snowshoes are really only useful if you've got 10, 12 or more inches of snow.